Hello YouTube reloaders. Thanks for watching. Hornady Loader here. My standard disclaimer, I am not an employee of Hornady Manufacturing, nor do I have any interest, financially or otherwise, in the sale of Hornady products. I've been reloading for almost 35 years, and for the last 20 years I've been using Hornady equipment almost exclusively, hence the name Hornady Loader. The Hornady logo is a registered trademark of Hornady Manufacturing, Grand Island, Nebraska.
Today's video will be an examination of the Hornady neck wall thickness gauge. Now, the thickness gauge kit is actually an accessory for the Hornady Concentricity tool. So, just buying the kit by itself won't do you any good. You also need the Hornady Concentricity tool to go along with it. Essentially, what this does is it will convert your Concentricity tool into a neck wall thickness gauge. It comes with three components. It has a new dial indicator. It has a new spindle to replace the bullet spindle on your concentricity gauge. And it comes with an assortment of trimmer pilots. The same kind of pilots that are used in the Camlock trimmer or the Power Case Prep Center. Now, to convert the concentricity gauge over to a neck wall thickness gauge, the first thing you'll do is replace the dial caliper. Now, let me zoom in on the dials here. They're almost identical with one modification. Okay, the dial on the right is the one from the Hornady Concentricity tool. The one on the left is the dial indicator from the one from the neck wall thickness gauge. Now, the only difference between the two is on the concentricity tool, the dial indicator, each tick mark represents 1/1000th of an inch. The numbers you see here represent thousandths of an inch as well. So you have 10 thousandths, 20 thousandths, 30 thousandths, and so on. On the neck wall thickness gauge dial indicator, each tick mark represents 5/10,000ths of an inch, or half of a thousandth. Now, the numbers on the gauge also represent thousandths. So here we have 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths, and so on. One full revolution of the needle on either gauge represents 1 inch. Okay, you'll notice that this one has 100 tick marks, or goes from 0 to 90 up to 100. This one goes by 5, 0, 5, 10, and so on, up to 50. So the dial indicator that comes with the neck wall thickness gauge is exactly twice as sensitive as the one that comes with the concentricity tool. To convert your concentricity tool to a neck wall thickness gauge, all you do is you replace the dial caliper with the caliper from the neck wall kit. And we're going to replace the bullet spindle with the spindle that comes with the neck wall kit. The bullet spindle has a set screw on the end of it here, so that you can insert the trimmer pilots. Now, I'm going to be using trimmer pilot number 1 since I'll be doing 223 cases today. Okay, I just insert that into the spindle. Tighten the set screw. And now we're going to remove the spindle that comes with the concentricity tool. To do that, I simply remove the ball knob and remove the spindle. I'm going to hold on to the spring here. There's also a collar in there. You don't really have to take it out, but just for clarity's sake, let me push it out here, show you. If it'll come out. There we go. So there's the collar. Now we're going to use the collar and the spring. We're going to put that over the spindle just like we would on the bullet spindle, and we'll put the collar over that just like that, and then we'll reinsert it into the frame and replace our ball knob. Okay, so that's all there is to converting your concentricity tool to a neck wall thickness gauge. Now I just want to point out one thing on the spindle here where the pilot connects. The pilot doesn't go all the way into the spindle. You'll see there's a little gap, about I don't know, an eighth of an inch, maybe a little less of a gap there between the flat area of the pilot and the end of the spindle itself. Now that's supposed to be there. You won't be able to get the pilot in any further. I'll show you in a minute here why that gap needs to be in there. Okay? So we've got our concentricity tool turned into a neck wall thickness gauge. Next, we need to adjust it for the cases that we're going to measure, and we go from there. Okay, I've got it set to an overhead view here so you can see everything a little bit better. The next thing we need to do is adjust the dial indicator and the case head spindle properly for use as a neck wall thickness gauge. Now the first thing I'm going to do, I loosen the lock lever on the cradle here, and I'm going to move the cradle over so that the arm, or the tip of the arm for the dial indicator, sits on the flat part of the pilot, and I'm going to lock that back down. Now if we take a closer look at that, you want to make sure that the arm of the dial indicator doesn't touch the spindle here. That's kind of why the gap is right here. So if it was all the way in, it would be kind of difficult to get that arm onto the flat part of the trimmer without touching the spindle. Now I'm going to adjust that just a little bit more. Get it kind of in the center of the flat part of the spindle, or the pilot. There we go. I'll tighten that down, and you can see that the arm still is not touching the spindle there. That's very important. That'll mess up your measurements if that's touching there, and you want to try to get it as close to the center as you can. That's why that gap is there. Without that gap, we wouldn't be able to get it in the center of the trimmer without touching the spindle. Okay, let me zoom back out here. Now I've also got the O-rings at the top here adjusted so that the arm only comes down a little bit past the flat part of the pilot. You don't want it to go all the way across. That'll just make it more difficult to get a case in and out of the tool. Next, we want to take a case. Now the cases that you measure with this, they need to be cleaned, they need to be sized, and they need to be trimmed. The reason for that, I'm going to place the case head in the case head spindle. I'm going to move it across. I'm going to have the neck of the case go into the pilot there. I want it to go across the flat part of the trimmer pilot, but I don't want it to touch the neck sort spindle on the right. If your cases aren't trimmed properly, then some of your cases will touch, some won't be long enough, you know, so you need to make sure that your cases have all been trimmed before you do this. Now let me zoom in on that so you can see. If the case is, need to go just a little bit further here, so the case is covering that flat part of the trimmer pilot. Just a little bit more here. Oops, a little bit too far there. Pull it back right about, there we go. And I'm going to tighten the case head spindle lock nut. And lock that into place. Okay, so our neck wall thickness gauge has been adjusted. Nothing is touching the neck sort spindle here on the right. Now down here is this is the adjustment for the run out adjustment for the concentricity tool. This isn't used at all, so I'm just going to back this out all the way so it doesn't get in the way. This won't be used at all for measuring neck wall thickness. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the case out. I'm going to put the spindle back on the dial indicator arm back on the trimmer pilot, and I'm going to zero my dial out. Okay, so that essentially represents zero thickness for my neck wall. And I put the case head in the case head spindle. I pull back on the ball knob, and I insert the pilot into the neck of the case. Then what I can do, I can read the measurement or how thick the neck wall is here on the dial. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it slowly towards me until I get the smallest reading that I can on the dial. Let me zoom in on the dial so you can see that a little better. Now, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate that case, and I'm going to pull it very slightly towards the case head spindle so it doesn't come out and touch the neck sort spindle. I'm going to try to get it down to its smallest value. So, at the thinnest part of the neck, it's just over 10.5 thousandths. And as I turn it, I can see that it goes up past 11, 11.5. And looks like that's about as high as it's going to go. So there's about a 1/1000th difference in the thickness of the neck wall on this particular case. Maybe even a little less. Oh, there it goes down to a little less than 1/1000th difference on the wall of this case. Take a different case here. Insert it the same way. And try to find the smallest value here. Right about there. So at the very thinnest on the neck of this particular case, it's about 10.5 thousandths. And I'm going to rotate it slowly until I find the highest value. It's up to 12. And then back down again. So Looks like the difference in the neck wall in this case is about 1.5 thousandths. Goes from 10.5 to right about 12. Try another case here. It's at 11. So just under 11th looks like is the thinnest part of the neck. It goes up to about 11.5. This particular case is pretty good. The difference in neck wall thickness is only about, well, there it goes up to about 12. So it's about 1/1000th difference in the thickness of the neck wall on this particular case. Goes from 11 to about 12 there. Okay. So that's all I'm doing. Is I'm simply rotating the case very slowly towards me to find the thinnest and thickest part of the case. Now it's very important that the neck sort spindle on the right here doesn't turn. You can kind of put the set screw on top here and keep an eye on it, make sure that it doesn't move as you turn the case. If it does, you can simply hold the ball knob to keep that neck sort spindle from turning. The case head spindle won't turn because it's been locked in with the case head spindle lock knob. But that's all you have to do, is just spin it very slowly. Remember, this dial indicator is very sensitive, so you have to do it kind of slowly. Also, you should check your cases before you do this for any dents or dings or whatnot on the wall of the neck, because that will affect your reading as well. Now, in order to correct cases whose neck wall is a little bit thick in one area and very thin in another, or to try to even them out a little bit, you'll need to get a different tool. For instance, I normally use the Hornady neck turning tool to turn the neck and get the neck down to a level or a thickness where I want it and get a more uniform thickness. Okay. Also, you want to try to get all of your cases, if you're loading for accuracy, you want to make sure that the neck wall on all the cases that you're using in a particular batch are all the same thickness. For instance, one of ours started out at about 11, so we might want to find all the cases that we have that have a neck wall thickness of 11, and I try to get the difference between the thinnest and thickest part down to under 1/1000th at least, but I like to try to get it down to under 1/2 thousandths for my match grade ammunition. Okay, and that's really all there is to the neck wall thickness tool. It's essentially the concentration tool converted into a neck wall thickness gauge. Oh, by the way, the reason the Hornady Concentricity tool is called a tool and the neck wall thickness gauge is called a gauge is because the Concentricity tool not only measures the runout of your cartridges, but also has this adjustment knob down here at the bottom to allow you to correct the runout. So it's actually a tool that you can use to correct the problem. The neck wall thickness gauge doesn't correct the problem. All it does is measure the neck wall, and if you need to make a correction, you'll need something like the Hornady neck turning tool or RCBS, and other manufacturers make them, but you'll need one of those in order to correct the problem. So that's all there is to it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I appreciate it if you click the like button, maybe even subscribe to my channel. So thanks for watching. Happy reloading.